The Nevada sun beat down mercilessly on Route 50, turning the asphalt into shimmering waves of heat that rose like ghosts from the desert floor. Aisha Jackson wiped the sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a faint smudge of grease from the kitchen where she'd just picked up another order. The Silver Star Diner sat like a forgotten relic at the edge of nowhere, a small roadside restaurant that had seen better days with its faded red vinyl booths, cracked Formica countertops, and a neon sign that only half worked, flickering silver into the growing dusk. At 23, Aisha had already lived several lifetimes of struggle. Her rich brown skin glowed under the harsh lights, her tightly coiled black hair pulled back into a neat puff, revealing a face that was striking despite the exhaustion etched into every feature. Dark circles shadowed her deep brown eyes that had once sparkled with dreams, but now mostly reflected the harsh fluorescent lights of the diner and the anxiety that came with counting every dollar, every tip, every moment until her next shift ended. "Aisha, table 4 needs a refill," Benjamin's gravelly voice called from the kitchen window. The 60-year-old owner of the Silver Star had been running this place for 30 years, and it showed in every worn corner, every peeling edge of wallpaper. He was a decent man, though. He'd given Aisha this job 2 years ago when she'd walked in, desperate and pregnant, with nowhere else to turn. "On it, Ben," Aisha called back, grabbing the coffee pot with practiced efficiency. Her movements were automatic now. Muscle memory from thousands of shifts. Pour, smile, ask about the food, clear plates, wipe tables, repeat. The monotony had become a kind of meditation, a way to keep her mind from wandering to darker places, like the pile of overdue medical bills stuffed in her kitchen drawer, or the notice from her landlord threatening eviction if she was late with rent one more time. She moved between tables with the grace of someone who'd learned to navigate tight spaces. Table 4 was occupied by a trucker named Liam, who came through every Tuesday like clockwork. He nodded his thanks as she topped off his coffee, his weathered face creasing into a kind smile that reminded Aisha there were still good people in the world. "How's your little one doing?" Liam asked, his voice rough from years of cigarettes and diesel fumes. "Zoe's doing great. Thanks for asking," Aisha replied, and for a moment, genuine warmth broke through her tired expression. Her daughter was the one bright spot in her life. A 2-year-old bundle of energy with tight curls and a laugh that could melt the hardest heart. "She's with Mrs. Chen next door, starting to put whole sentences together now." "That's wonderful. They grow up so fast." Liam pulled out a $20 bill for his $12 meal. "Keep the change, hon. Buy that little girl something nice." Aisha felt the familiar sting of grateful tears, but pushed them back. "Thank you, Liam. That's really kind." This was her life now. Cobbling together an existence from tips and kindness, working doubles whenever Ben would let her, trying to be both mother and father to Zoe, whose biological father had disappeared the moment he'd heard the word pregnant. Aisha had thought about leaving Nevada, about trying to find something better in California, or maybe back east. But what would be the point? Poverty looked pretty much the same everywhere, and at least here she had Mrs. Chen to watch Zoe, had this job, had some semblance of stability, however fragile it might be. The afternoon crawled forward with its usual rhythm. Charlotte, the other waitress, clocked in at 3. Her makeup perfect, and her blonde hair styled in a way that Aisha could never manage. Charlotte was younger, prettier, and knew exactly how to work the male customers for better tips. Aisha didn't resent her for it. Everyone had to survive somehow, but she couldn't help feeling a little invisible when Charlotte was around. "Dead in here today," Charlotte observed, popping her gum as she tied her apron. "Hope it picks up. I need to make at least 100 tonight." "It'll pick up around dinner," Aisha assured her, though she wasn't entirely certain. The Silver Star was dying a slow death, losing customers to the new truck stop 15 miles up the road with its shiny chrome and modern amenities. But Ben kept the place running out of sheer stubbornness and pride, and Aisha was grateful for it. Around 4:30, the diner was nearly empty. An elderly couple sat in the corner booth, picking at their early bird special. A teenager occupied a stool at the counter, nursing a Coke while scrolling through his phone. The air conditioning wheezed and struggled against the desert heat, managing only to push warm air around the dining room. Aisha was refilling salt shakers when she heard it. The distant rumble that made her pause made something primal in her chest tighten with an emotion she couldn't quite name. The sound grew louder, deeper, a mechanical thunder that seemed to shake the very air. She looked up to see Charlotte frozen at the window, her eyes wide. "Oh my God," Charlotte breathed. "Aisha, look!" Aisha moved to the window and felt her stomach drop. Coming down Route 50 was a convoy of motorcycles, not just any motorcycles, but big, gleaming Harleys, at least 15 of them, riding in tight formation. Even from a distance, she could see the leather vests, the patches, the unmistakable presence of men who belonged to something bigger and more dangerous than the ordinary world. The elderly couple quickly paid their bill and left. The teenager suddenly remembered he had somewhere to be. Within seconds, the diner had emptied of everyone except Aisha, Charlotte, and Ben, who'd emerged from the kitchen with a kitchen towel in his hands, and concern etched across his face. "Just stay calm," Ben said quietly. "Serve them like anyone else. Don't stare. Don't ask questions. They'll eat and leave." The motorcycles pulled into the parking lot with practiced precision, their engines cutting off one by one until an eerie silence fell over the diner. Aisha's heart hammered in her chest as she watched through the window. There were 14 men in total, all wearing leather vests with patches she couldn't quite make out from this distance. They moved with the confidence of people who were used to commanding respect or fear. The bell above the door chimed, and they filed in, their boots heavy on the linoleum floor. The smell of leather, engine oil, and cigarette smoke filled the diner. Aisha found herself unable to move, rooted to her spot behind the counter, as these men, these intimidating, larger-than-life figures, took over the space completely. They were older, most of them in their 50s and 60s, with weathered faces that told stories of hard lives lived on the road. Their vests were adorned with patches, pins, and insignia that Aisha didn't understand, but knew meant something significant. They arranged themselves across several booths, their presence transforming the sleepy diner into something else entirely. The last man to enter was clearly the leader. He was tall, probably 6'3", with broad shoulders and a commanding presence that made everyone else seem smaller. His steel-gray hair was pulled back in a ponytail, and his face was all sharp angles and hard lines, a face that had seen violence and survived it. His vest had more patches than the others, and when he walked, the rest followed with their eyes. His name patch read Jacob. "Charlotte, you take the tables on the left. Aisha, you've got the right side and the counter," Ben whispered urgently before retreating to the kitchen. Though Aisha noticed he didn't close the window completely, probably ready to call the police if things went sideways. Charlotte grabbed menus with shaking hands and approached the left booths. Aisha took a deep breath, straightened her apron, and reminded herself that these were just customers, just people who wanted food and coffee. Nothing more. She gathered menus and walked toward the booth where Jacob had seated himself with 3 other men. Her hands were steady. Years of poverty had taught her how to mask fear, how to smile when her world was crumbling. She'd faced eviction notices and hospital bills and single motherhood. She could handle serving coffee to some bikers. "Good afternoon, gentlemen," Aisha said, her voice clear and professional. "Welcome to the Silver Star. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Jacob looked up at her, and Aisha felt the weight of his gaze, calculating, intense, missing nothing. But there was something else there too, something she hadn't expected. Weariness. This man was tired. Bone-deep tired in a way that Aisha recognized because she saw it in her own mirror every morning. "Coffee, black, for everyone?" Jacob said, his voice deep and gravelly, carrying an accent that suggested he'd grown up somewhere in the Midwest. Maybe Illinois or Indiana. "Coming right up," Aisha said, managing a small smile before turning away. Her hands shook slightly as she prepared the coffee, but she forced them still. She'd learned early in life that showing weakness only invited trouble. She loaded a tray with cups and the coffee pot, took another steadying breath, and returned to the booth. As she poured the coffee, she tried not to notice the tattoos covering every visible inch of skin on these men. Skulls, eagles, flames, names, dates. Each one told a story, marked a moment, commemorated something or someone. She'd seen plenty of tattoos before, but these were different. These weren't fashion statements or youthful indiscretions. These were... Aisha's hand froze mid-pour, coffee steaming into Jacob's cup as her eyes locked onto his forearm. There, among the dense tapestry of ink, was a tattoo that made her heart stop. It was distinctive, a phoenix rising from flames, but not in the typical style. This phoenix had unusual proportions with wings that curved in a specific way, and within the flames were hidden stars, barely visible unless you knew to look for them. She knew to look for them, because she'd traced those same stars with her fingers 1,000 times growing up on her mother's shoulder blade, asking about each point and what it meant. The words left Aisha's mouth before her brain could stop them, innocent and reflexive. "Hello, sir. My mother has a tattoo exactly like yours." The effect of Aisha's words was immediate and electric. The low hum of conversation that had filled the diner, the murmur of men ordering food, the clink of silverware against plates, ceased entirely, as if someone had pressed a cosmic mute button. 14 pairs of eyes turned toward Aisha, with an intensity that made her feel like a butterfly pinned to a board. Suddenly and completely exposed. Jacob's hand, which had been reaching for his coffee cup, stopped mid-motion. His eyes, pale blue and sharp as broken glass, fixed on Aisha's face with a focus that was almost physical in its weight. The temperature in the diner seemed to drop 10 degrees, despite the struggling air conditioning and the Nevada heat pressing against the windows. "What did you just say?" Jacob's voice was quiet, controlled in a way that was far more frightening than if he'd shouted. It was the kind of quiet that preceded storms, the stillness before violence. Aisha felt her throat constrict. She'd made a mistake. She understood that now with perfect clarity, though she didn't know exactly what kind of mistake or why it mattered so much. Her mind raced, trying to find a way to take back the words, to rewind the last 30 seconds, and keep her mouth shut like she should have. "I'm sorry, Aisha started, but Jacob cut her off with a raised hand. "Your mother." Each word was deliberate, weighted. "Tell me about this tattoo your mother has." Aisha's instinct was to run, to drop her notepad and coffee pot, and flee through the kitchen, out the back door, into her car, and as far away from here as possible. But she had a 2-year-old daughter waiting at home. Bills that wouldn't pay themselves, and nowhere to run to, even if she could. So she stood her ground, forcing herself to meet Jacob's gaze, even as her legs trembled beneath her polyester uniform. It's a phoenix," Aisha said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Rising from flames, but the wings curve inward at the tips, and there are 5 stars hidden in the flames. My mother told me she got it when she was young." The silence stretched longer, tighter. One of the men at Jacob's table, A heavy-set biker with a black beard shot through with gray, leaned forward, his weathered face creasing with something that might have been recognition or might have been disbelief. "Boss," the bearded man said quietly, almost reverently. "That's—" "I know what it is, Noah," Jacob interrupted, never taking his eyes off Aisha. "What I don't know is how some waitress in a nowhere diner knows about it." "I told you," Aisha said, finding a spark of defensive anger cutting through her fear. "My mother has the same tattoo. I saw it my whole life growing up. I used to trace the stars with my fingers when I was little. She never told me what it meant, just that it was from when she was younger." Jacob leaned back in the booth, his expression unreadable. The other men remained silent, but Aisha could feel their attention like a physical presence. Charlotte had stopped serving entirely and stood frozen near the kitchen, her face pale. Ben had emerged halfway from the kitchen window, ready to intervene if necessary. "Your mother's name," Jacob said. It wasn't a question. Aisha hesitated. Every instinct screamed at her not to give these men any more information, not to connect them in any way to her life, her mother, her daughter. But she was trapped by her own words, by the recognition she'd seen flash across these men's faces, by the sudden certainty that whatever she'd stumbled into was far bigger than she'd imagined. "Evelyn," Aisha whispered. "Evelyn Jackson. That's her maiden name. She never married?" The reaction was instantaneous. Noah actually gasped, his hand gripping the edge of the table. Another man, younger, maybe mid-40s, with a scar running down his left cheek, whispered, "Holy shit," under his breath. Jacob's face underwent a transformation that was subtle but profound. The hard suspicion that had marked his features softened into something Aisha couldn't quite identify. Shock, grief, recognition. "Evelyn Stone," Jacob corrected, using a last name Aisha had never heard. "That's what we called her." "Your mother? How old is she now?" 52, Aisha said automatically, her mind reeling. Her mother had never mentioned that name. "She lives about 40 miles from here in Silver Springs. She works at a grocery store. I don't understand what's happening." Jacob exchanged looks with his companions, long, meaningful glances that communicated volumes without words. It was Noah who finally spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "Evelyn Stone saved my life. 19 years ago in Reno, when everything went to shit with the Diablos, she pulled me out of a burning building when everyone else had written me off as dead. I carry this," he tapped his heart, "because of her. We all do." "She was one of us," another man added from a different booth, his voice carrying across the now silent diner. "Not officially, maybe. Not with a patch. But she rode with us for 5 years. She was fearless, smart, loyal. We lost track of her after she left, but we never forgot." Aisha felt dizzy, like the floor beneath her feet had turned liquid. This couldn't be right. Her mother, quiet, gentle Evelyn, who worked at Save Mart and spent her evenings reading mystery novels and watching game shows, had been part of a motorcycle club, had saved lives and ridden with these dangerous-looking men. "There must be some mistake," Aisha said, shaking her head. "My mother is... she's not. She's just a normal person. She never rode a motorcycle in her life." "Is that what she told you?" Jacob's voice was gentler now, almost sad. "Kid, your mother was anything but normal. She was extraordinary. She could strip down an engine and rebuild it in under 3 hours. She could outshoot most of the men here. And when things got tough, when we were cornered or outgunned or just plain screwed, Evelyn was the one who kept her head and found a way out." Aisha's mind flashed through memories. Her mother's hands always capable, always knowing exactly how to fix things around their small apartment. The time Aisha had been bullied in middle school, and her mother had taught her to stand tall, to never show fear. The nights when money was especially tight, and Evelyn would look at their situation like it was a puzzle to be solved rather than a crisis to panic about. Could it be true? Why did she leave? Aisha found herself asking. Even as part of her wondered why she was engaging in this conversation at all. Why she wasn't running or calling the police or doing something other than standing here, learning impossible things about her mother's past. Jacob's expression grew distant, as if looking back through years of memory. Something happened. A bad situation that went worse. People died, both ours and theirs. Evelyn was there right in the middle of it. She survived. But afterward she said she was done. Said she wanted out, wanted a different life. We tried to convince her to stay, but when Evelyn made up her mind about something, there was no changing it. We respected her wishes, Noah added. Let her go clean. No ties, no obligations. It's not something we do often, but for her, we owed her that much. She was pregnant, Aisha said suddenly, the pieces clicking into place with devastating clarity. When she left, she was pregnant with me. The silence that followed this revelation was different from before. Heavier, loaded with understanding, and perhaps a touch of regret. Jacob nodded slowly. That would explain it. Evelyn never mentioned a pregnancy to us, but if she'd known, yeah, that would have been reason enough to walk away, to want something safer, something normal. Aisha felt tears burning at the corners of her eyes, but refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of these strangers who were rewriting her entire understanding of her mother's life, and by extension, her own identity. She'd grown up thinking her father had been some deadbeat who'd abandoned them. Her mother had always been vague about him, just saying he wasn't in the picture and leaving it at that. But what if there was more to the story? What if her mother's silence had been protection rather than evasion? Does she ever talk about the old days? One of the other bikers asked, a thin man with intense dark eyes and hands that were scarred and calloused. Never, Aisha admitted. She doesn't talk about her past at all. It's like she just appeared in the world 23 years ago. No stories, no photographs, nothing. That sounds like Evelyn, Jacob said, with something that might have been fondness. When she decided to leave something behind, she left it completely. No half measures. A timer beeped in the kitchen. Someone's order was ready. The mundane sound broke the spell of the moment, reminding everyone they were still in a diner, that the world beyond this conversation still existed. Aisha blinked, realizing she'd been standing at their table for several minutes, that Charlotte was staring at her with wide eyes, that Ben looked ready to have a heart attack. I should take your orders, Aisha said, her voice sounding strange in her own ears. In a minute, Jacob said. He reached into his vest pocket and pulled out his phone, a surprisingly modern gesture from someone who seemed to exist outside the normal flow of contemporary life. He scrolled through it briefly, then turned it to face Aisha. Is this her? The photograph on the screen was old, faded, clearly from the era before digital cameras became ubiquitous. It showed a group of bikers posed in front of their motorcycles, all leather and attitude and youthful swagger. And there on the end was a woman Aisha recognized instantly, despite the 25-year gap. Her mother, so young, younger than Aisha was now, with a bold afro framing her face, and a smile that was fierce and free in a way Aisha had never seen on her face in real life. She was wearing leather, had her arms crossed, and her eyes held a confidence and fire that seemed to belong to a completely different person from the tired grocery store clerk Aisha knew. That's her, Aisha whispered, her finger trembling as it hovered over the screen. That's my mom. Jacob pulled the phone back and looked at the photo himself, his expression softening further. One of the best people I've ever known, he said quietly. We all felt the loss when she left. There was a hole in the club that never quite got filled. Aisha didn't know what to say. She felt like she'd stepped through a portal into an alternate reality where nothing made sense, and all her assumptions about her life were being systematically dismantled. Her mother, the woman who'd raised her alone, who'd worked minimum wage jobs to keep food on the table, who'd never complained about the hard life they'd had, was some kind of legendary figure to these men, had lived this entire other existence before Aisha was born. I need to... Aisha gestured vaguely towards the kitchen, needing space to process, needing a moment to breathe. Of course, Jacob said. We'll order in a bit, but Aisha? He waited until she met his eyes again. Your mother is a remarkable woman. You should know that. Whatever life she's living now, whatever she's told you or hasn't told you, she made choices because she loved you. Everything she gave up for you. The tears Aisha had been holding back finally escaped, tracking hot lines down her cheeks. She nodded, not trusting her voice, and fled to the kitchen where she could finally briefly fall apart. Aisha stood in the kitchen, her hands braced against the stainless steel counter, taking deep, shuddering breaths. Ben approached cautiously, his weathered hand gentle on her shoulder. You okay, kid? He asked, his voice gruff with concern. I don't know, Aisha admitted, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Ben, did you know about my mom? Ben shook his head. Evelyn never talked about her past, and I never asked. Seemed like we all have things we'd rather leave buried. But I'm not surprised. Your mother's always had something different about her, like she'd seen more of life than most folks. Aisha laughed bitterly. I thought I knew her. I thought I understood my own life. Now I find out everything I believed was just the surface, the story she wanted me to see. Maybe she was protecting you, Ben suggested. Sometimes love looks like secrets. Before Aisha could respond, Charlotte burst through the kitchen door, her eyes wide with excitement and fear in equal measure. Aisha, they want to talk to you again. Jacob, the leader guy, he's asking for you specifically. Aisha's stomach clenched. She didn't want to go back out there, didn't want to learn more things that would shatter her understanding of reality. But she also felt a pull, a desperate need to understand, to know the full truth about where she came from and who her mother really was. Tell them I'll be right there, Aisha said, straightening her uniform and splashing cold water on her face from the sink. When she emerged from the kitchen, she found that the atmosphere in the diner had shifted. The initial tension had dissipated, replaced by something closer to nostalgia. The bikers were talking among themselves in low voices, and several had pulled out their phones, presumably looking at old photographs. Jacob waved her over to his booth, and there was nothing threatening in the gesture, only invitation. Sit, he said, gesturing to the empty space beside Noah. Please, Aisha hesitated, then slid into the booth. It felt surreal to be sitting with these intimidating men, to be included in whatever this moment was. I've been making some calls, Jacob said, setting his phone on the table. Word's spreading that Evelyn Stone's daughter is here working in a diner on Route 50. Half the old crew wants to drive out to meet you. The other half can't believe it's real. I'm not sure I believe it's real, Aisha admitted. This morning I woke up. I made breakfast for my daughter. I came to work. Now I'm sitting here learning my mother was some kind of biker legend. It's like finding out your parent is secretly a superhero. She was, in her own way, said the man with the scarred cheek. His name tag read, Alexander. Not in the way you'd think, maybe. She didn't go looking for fights. But when trouble found us, and it always found us, she was the one you wanted beside you. Tell me, Aisha said, making a decision. Tell me about her. Tell me who she was before I was born. Jacob and Noah exchanged glances. Then Noah began. I met Evelyn in the winter of '99 at a rally in Phoenix. She'd just started riding with the club, sponsored by Marcus, who was our president before Jacob. She was maybe 27, 28 then, younger than most of us, and definitely the only woman who'd been brought into the inner circle in years. Why? Aisha asked. Why did they bring her in? Because she earned it, Alexander said simply. The club isn't just about motorcycles and leather vests. It's about loyalty, about family, about having people you trust with your life. Evelyn proved herself over and over. There was this time in Tucson, the Diablo situation, Jacob interrupted. That's the story Noah should tell. That's the one that matters most. Noah's expression grew serious, distant with memory. It was 2001. We'd had a territorial dispute with another club, the Diablos, over some business arrangements that went south. Tensions had been building for months. Then one night they ambushed 5 of us at a clubhouse in Reno. They'd waited until most of the members were gone, caught us when we were vulnerable. He paused, his hand unconsciously moving to his chest over his heart as if touching a scar beneath the leather. They firebombed the place. Molotov cocktails through the windows. The building went up fast. It was an old structure, lots of wood, and someone had spilled beer and liquor all over the floor earlier that night. Perfect accelerant. We were trapped inside. The front door was blocked by flames. The back exit had been chained shut from outside. Aisha felt her throat tighten, imagining the scene, the smoke, the heat, the terror of being trapped. I'd been drinking that night, too much. When the fire started, I was disoriented, couldn't find my way through the smoke. The other guys made it to a window and broke through, but I went the wrong direction. Ended up in the back room. I could feel the heat on every side. I thought that was it. I thought I was done. That's when Evelyn showed up. Alexander continued the story. She hadn't been at the clubhouse. She'd been at her apartment a few miles away, but she heard the sirens. Had a feeling something was wrong. She drove over on her bike just as the building was really starting to cook. She went in, Noah said, his voice thick with emotion. Even after all these years, the guys out front told her I was still inside. Probably dead. She didn't hesitate, just wrapped her jacket around her face and ran straight into that inferno. Found me passed out from smoke inhalation in the back room. She was small, couldn't have weighed more than 130, but she dragged me through that building, through the flames, all the way out the window. We all got burned, Alexander added, but we lived because of her. The Diablos didn't give up, Jacob said, taking over the narrative. They came after us again and again. It turned into a war that lasted nearly 2 years. Evelyn was right in the thick of it. She didn't carry weapons. That wasn't her style. But she was our strategist, our planner. She could think 3 moves ahead, anticipate what the other side would do before they did it. She ended the war, said a voice from another booth. Aisha looked over to see an older man, his gray hair thin and wispy, his face deeply lined. I'm Benjamin, same name as your boss, actually. I was there for the final confrontation. Evelyn negotiated the peace treaty, sat down with the Diablo's president and his lieutenants. No backup, no protection, just her and her word. She convinced them the war was bleeding both clubs dry, that we'd all end up in prison or dead if we kept going. She brokered a deal that saved lives on both sides. That's when the club gave her the Phoenix tattoo, Noah explained. It's not a tattoo you can just get on your own. It's earned. It means you've been through fire, literally or figuratively, and come out stronger. Only 7 people in the club's entire history have earned that mark. Your mother was the first woman. Aisha looked down at her hands, trying to reconcile this image of her mother. Fierce, brave, strategic, respected, with the woman who'd raised her. The woman who'd worked double shifts at a convenience store to afford Aisha's school supplies, who'd made peanut butter sandwiches last for 3 meals, who'd apologized for not being able to give Aisha a better life. What happened? Aisha asked. Why did she leave all this behind? Jacob's expression darkened. There was one last job, a bad one. We'd made a deal to move some merchandise for a supplier. Legal stuff mostly, but the arrangement skirted some boundaries. The meat went wrong. The supplier turned out to be working with the DEA. There was a raid. Shots were fired. 2 people died. One of theirs, one of ours. Evelyn was there, Noah said quietly. She got out before the arrests started, but it shook her. She'd seen people die before, but this time something changed. She came to the clubhouse the next day and said she was done. Said she'd given enough years to this life and needed to walk away before it took everything. We tried to change her mind, Alexander admitted. But you couldn't change Evelyn's mind once it was made up. She was like stone when she decided something. Stone? Aisha repeated. That's what you called her, Evelyn Stone. Why? Because that's what she was, Jacob said. Unbreakable, solid, something you could build a foundation on. When everything was chaos, Evelyn was the constant, the rock we could all cling to. Aisha wiped her eyes, overwhelmed by the weight of these stories, by the discovery of this entire hidden history. She never told me any of this, never even hinted. I grew up thinking we were alone, that she had no past, no connections. I thought, her voice broke. I thought she was just surviving, just getting by. I didn't know she'd given up so much. She gave it up for you, Jacob said firmly. Whatever she lost when she left, she gained you. And looking at you now, working hard, taking care of your daughter, standing tall even though life's been tough, I'd say she made the right choice. How did you... Aisha started. Ben mentioned your daughter when we were ordering, Jacob explained. Said you're a single mom working 2 jobs some weeks, that you're a fighter. I can see your mother in you, Aisha, in the way you didn't back down when I questioned you, in the way you're sitting here now, asking questions instead of running away. Evelyn would be proud. The bell above the door chimed, and Aisha looked up to see more customers entering, a young couple looking nervous at the presence of so many bikers. Charlotte moved to serve them, but Aisha could tell her co-worker was listening to every word being said at this booth. I should take your order, Aisha said, remembering she was still at work. That time was passing, that the normal world still existed despite these revelations. In a bit, Jacob said. First, there's something I want you to have. He reached into his vest and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft with age. He unfolded it carefully and turned it toward Aisha. It was a photograph, the same one he'd shown her on his phone. But this was the original print, faded and creased from being carried for years. The group of bikers, and on the end, her mother. This is yours, Jacob said, if you want it. Aisha took the photograph with trembling hands. She stared at her mother's young face, at the confidence and strength radiating from her, at the family of bikers surrounding her. Thank you, Aisha whispered. There's more, Noah said. He pulled out a leather bracelet from his pocket, simple, worn, with small metal studs embedded in it. This was Evelyn's. She left it behind when she went. I've been keeping it safe, thinking maybe someday. Well, it belongs with her family now. Aisha took the bracelet, feeling the weight of history in the worn leather. She slipped it onto her wrist where it fit perfectly, as if it had been waiting all these years for this moment. The diner had taken on an almost surreal quality as the afternoon wore into early evening. Aisha found herself moving between tables, taking orders, serving food, refilling drinks, but her mind was elsewhere, spinning through decades of her mother's hidden history. The bikers had finally ordered, and she brought them plates of burgers and fries, coffee and pie, while they continued sharing stories. Tell her about the motorcycle race, Alexander said to Jacob, a grin splitting his scarred face. That one still kills me, Jacob chuckled, a sound that seemed foreign coming from such an intimidating figure. All right, so this was maybe 2000 summer. We were at a rally in Sturgis, you know, the big one in South Dakota. Evelyn had been riding with us for about 6 months, and some guys from a rival club started giving her grief, saying she couldn't really ride, that she was just tagging along, basically questioning whether she belonged. Big mistake, Noah interjected, shaking his head. Huge mistake, Jacob agreed. So Evelyn, cool as you please, challenges their best rider to a race. No rules, no restrictions, just pure riding skill. The course was a 20-mile loop through the Black Hills. Narrow mountain roads, tight curves, the kind of riding that separates the skilled from the lucky. Aisha leaned against the booth, momentarily forgetting she was supposed to be working. What happened? Your mother destroyed him, Alexander said with obvious satisfaction. Wasn't even close. She took corners that should have been impossible at those speeds, handled her bike like it was an extension of her own body. By the time she crossed the finish line, the other guy was still 3 minutes behind, and his crew was dead silent. After that, Jacob continued, nobody questioned whether Evelyn belonged. She'd proven herself on everyone's terms in everyone's arena. That's how she operated. She didn't demand respect. She earned it over and over until there was no doubt. Another biker spoke up from a nearby table. A younger man, probably in his mid-40s, with intricate sleeve tattoos. I joined the club in 2002, right before she left. Evelyn was the one who trained me, taught me how to ride properly, how to maintain my bike, how to carry myself. She was patient but demanding. Wouldn't let you get away with sloppy work or half measures. What was she like? Aisha asked. I mean, beyond all the brave and skilled stuff, what was she like as a person? The men exchanged glances, each reaching for memories that were 2 decades old. Funny, Noah said finally. She had this dry sense of humor that would catch you off guard, could deliver a joke with a completely straight face, and you wouldn't realize she was messing with you until everyone else was laughing. Private, Alexander added. She didn't talk much about her past, even back then. We knew she'd grown up in foster care, bounced around different homes, never had a real family. The club became her family, but she always kept certain parts of herself locked away. Smart as hell, Jacob said. Evelyn could have been anything she wanted, engineer, doctor, whatever. But she chose this life, at least for a while. She read constantly, always had a book tucked in her saddlebag. Philosophy, history, mechanics manuals. She was teaching herself everything. Aisha thought about the books that lined the small shelf in her mother's apartment. Mysteries, thrillers, biographies. Self-education had always been Evelyn's way. Aisha realized she'd dropped out of high school, but had taught herself enough to help Aisha with homework through college-level courses. Did she ever mention wanting kids? Aisha asked quietly. Before she knew she was pregnant with me, I mean, was that something she talked about? Jacob's expression grew thoughtful. Once, I remember. We were sitting outside a bar in Wyoming late at night. Most of the others had gone inside. Evelyn was looking up at the stars, and she said something like, "You ever think about what comes after this, after the riding and the brotherhood and the freedom? What's on the other side of always moving?" I told her there was nothing after this, that this was the life we'd chosen. Jacob continued, his voice tinged with regret. She just looked at me and said, "There's always something after. Everything ends eventually, even the things we think will last forever." She was preparing to leave even then, Noah realized, looking for the exit, thinking about what came next. Or maybe, Aisha suggested, she already knew she was pregnant. Maybe that conversation was her way of testing the waters, seeing if there was room in this world for a child. Silence fell over the table as the men absorbed this possibility. Jacob nodded slowly. You might be right. The timing would line up. She left maybe 2 months after that conversation. Who was my father? The question burst from Aisha before she could stop it, raw and desperate. Was he one of you? Was he in the club? The discomfort among the bikers was palpable. Men who'd faced violence and danger without flinching now shifted uneasily, exchanged uncertain glances. We don't know, Jacob finally admitted. Evelyn was private about her personal life. She didn't date within the club, had a strict rule about that, said it complicated the brotherhood, created jealousy and tension. But there was a period of maybe 3-4 months before she left where she'd disappear sometimes. Not on club business, just gone for a day or two here and there. She had someone, Alexander said, We all knew it, but we didn't pry. Everyone's entitled to their privacy." "Do you think she loved him?" Aisha asked. "My father, whoever he was." "I think," Jacob said carefully, "that Evelyn was capable of deep feeling, but she was also pragmatic. If she didn't tell him about the pregnancy, if she chose to leave and raise you alone, there was a reason. Maybe he wasn't fit to be a father. Maybe the situation was complicated. Maybe she just wanted to protect you from something." Aisha felt the familiar ache of not knowing, of having this fundamental question about her identity remain unanswered. She'd long ago made peace with being fatherless, or so she'd thought. But having these men here, these people who'd known her mother in ways Aisha never had, made the absence feel fresh and painful again. "Your mother made choices," Noah said gently, reading the pain in Aisha's expression. "Maybe they weren't the choices you would have wanted. Maybe you wish she'd told you more, included you in this history. But she chose you, Aisha. She walked away from all this, from the respect and the brotherhood and the freedom and the identity she'd built because you mattered more. That's love. Real, solid, unshakable love." "I know," Aisha said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just wish she'd trusted me enough to tell me. I'm 23 years old. I have a daughter of my own. I could have understood." "Maybe," Jacob said, "she was still protecting you or protecting herself. When you leave a life like this behind, sometimes the only way to make it work is to bury it completely. To never look back, never talk about it, never let it touch your new reality. Otherwise, you're always living in two worlds, never fully present in either one." Charlotte approached the table nervously, holding a coffee pot. "Refills?" she asked, her voice higher than usual. The men accepted gratefully, and Charlotte poured with shaking hands before retreating quickly. Aisha noticed the restaurant had filled up again. Apparently, word had spread about the motorcycle club at the Silver Star, and people were curious enough to come see for themselves, though they kept their distance, staying on the opposite side of the diner. "I should let you eat in peace," Aisha said, standing. "I've taken up enough of your time." "Aisha," Jacob called as she started to walk away. When she turned back, he was pulling something else from his vest. A business card, plain white, with just a phone number printed on it. "This is my direct line. If you ever need anything, help, advice, someone to talk to, you call. The club takes care of its own, and Evelyn's daughter is family." Aisha took the card, feeling the weight of the offer. "Thank you. That means more than you know." "Will you tell her?" Noah asked. "Your mother. Will you tell her about meeting us?" Aisha hesitated. Would she? Should she? This was her mother's buried past, her secrets, her choice to leave all this behind. Did Aisha have the right to excavate it? To force a conversation about a life Evelyn had clearly wanted to forget? "I don't know," Aisha admitted. "Maybe I need to think about it." "If you do tell her," Jacob said, "let her know we remember. Let her know she's still respected, still valued. Let her know she was right to leave, to choose you, to build something better. And let her know if she ever needs anything, we're still here." Aisha nodded, not trusting herself to speak without crying again. She'd done enough crying today. She turned and walked back toward the kitchen, feeling the weight of the photograph in her pocket and the leather bracelet on her wrist. Tangible proof that the last few hours had been real, not some fever dream brought on by dehydration and exhaustion. The bikers stayed for almost 3 hours in total. They ate slowly, ordered multiple rounds of pie and coffee, tipped extravagantly. Aisha found a $100 bill under each plate when she cleared their tables. As the sun began to set, painting the Nevada sky in brilliant oranges and purples, they finally began to file out, their boots heavy on the linoleum floor, their presence gradually diminishing until only Jacob remained. He sat at the counter, nursing a final cup of coffee, waiting until the diner had emptied of other customers. Aisha approached with the coffee pot, topping off his cup without being asked. "Thank you," Jacob said, "for listening, for giving us a chance to remember her properly." "I should be thanking you," Aisha replied, leaning against the counter. "You gave me something I didn't know I was missing, a bigger picture of where I come from." Jacob studied her face, and Aisha felt that same intense scrutiny from earlier, but now it felt less threatening and more paternal. "You're struggling," he observed. It wasn't a question. Aisha considered denying it, maintaining the facade of having everything under control, but she was too tired for pride. "Single parent, minimum wage job, mountains of debt. Yeah, I'm struggling, but so is everyone, right? At least I have Zoe. At least I have something worth struggling for." "Your mother taught you that," Jacob said. "That perspective, that ability to find the good even when everything's hard." "Maybe," Aisha conceded. "Or maybe it's just survival instinct." Jacob reached into his vest one more time and pulled out an envelope, thick, manila-colored, sealed. He slid it across the counter toward Aisha. "The club wants you to have this." Aisha stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. "What is it?" "Help. Call it back payment for everything your mother did for us. Call it an investment in the next generation. Call it whatever you want, but take it. It's yours." "I can't," Aisha started. "You can and you will," Jacob interrupted firmly. "Your mother never asked us for anything, never took more than her fair share, never leveraged her position for personal gain. That's part of why we respected her so much. But she's not here to accept our help, so we're giving it to you instead. This isn't charity, Aisha. This is family taking care of family." With trembling hands, Aisha opened the envelope. Inside were neatly banded stacks of bills, 20s, 50s, hundreds. Her heart stopped. There had to be $10,000, Jacob confirmed, from the brothers who were here today, and from others who heard the news and wanted to contribute. It's clean money, nothing illegal, just a collection taken up among people who loved your mother and want to help her daughter. Aisha felt tears streaming down her face, no longer able to hold them back. $10,000. It was more money than she'd ever seen in one place in her entire life. It was enough to pay off her medical bills, catch up on rent, maybe even put something aside for Zoe's future. It was a lifeline thrown to someone drowning. "I don't know what to say," Aisha whispered. "Say you'll use it to build something better," Jacob replied. "Say you'll give your daughter opportunities you didn't have. Say you'll remember that you come from strength, from courage, from a woman who faced fire and came out the other side. That's all we want." Aisha clutched the envelope to her chest, overwhelmed by the generosity, by the sense of connection to something larger than herself. "I will, I promise." Jacob stood, dropping a final 20 on the counter for the coffee. "Your mother made her choice 23 years ago. She chose quiet over chaos, safety over excitement, stability over freedom. But the fire she had, the strength, the courage, the unbreakable will, that doesn't disappear. It gets passed down. I see it in you, Aisha. So did everyone here today." "Will I see you again?" Aisha asked as Jacob headed toward the door. He paused, his hand on the door handle. "That depends. Are you planning to tell your mother about this?" "I think I have to," Aisha said. "I can't keep something this big a secret. And maybe she needs to know that we met, that I know now, that I understand a little more about why she is the way she is." Jacob nodded approvingly. "Then yes, you'll see me again. Because when Evelyn hears that we've reconnected with her daughter, she'll want to see us. She'll have questions. She'll probably be angry we gave you this money." He smiled slightly. "But she'll come around. She always did." "Tell me one more thing," Aisha said urgently as Jacob began to push the door open. "If you could go back, knowing what you know now, that she was pregnant, that she needed to leave to give me a chance, would you have let her go more easily? Would you have helped her, instead of trying to make her stay? Jacob's expression grew sad. Yes, without hesitation. Your mother gave us 5 years of loyalty, of courage, of friendship. We should have given her our blessing and our support when she needed to move forward. That's the one regret I carry from those days, that we made leaving harder than it needed to be because we couldn't imagine the club without her. But she left anyway, Aisha said. Because she's strong, like stone, Jacob agreed. Unbreakable. He paused, then added, You have my number. Use it if you need anything. And Aisha, welcome to the family. Even if you never ride with us, even if you choose your mother's path of quiet and stability, you're still one of us. You always will be. Then he was gone, the door swinging shut behind him, the rumble of his Harley starting up in the parking lot. Aisha watched through the window as the motorcycles roared to life one by one, their headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. They pulled out in formation just as they'd arrived, disappearing down Route 50 until even the sound of their engines faded into memory. Aisha stood in the empty diner, the envelope of money in one hand and her mother's old photograph in the other. Ben and Charlotte watching her with expressions of amazement and concern. You okay, kid? Ben asked softly. I don't know, Aisha admitted, but I think I'm going to be. That night, after her shift ended, Aisha drove to her mother's small apartment in Silver Springs. It was late, almost 11, but she knew Evelyn would still be awake. Her mother was a night owl, always had been, though Aisha had never understood why until now. Maybe old habits from a life of late-night rides and dawn meetings died hard. Evelyn answered the door in her bathrobe, her graying hair loose around her shoulders, reading glasses perched on her nose. Aisha, what are you doing here so late? Is Zoe okay? Zoe's fine. She's with Mrs. Chen. Mom, can I come in? We need to talk. Something in Aisha's tone must have warned Evelyn that this wasn't a casual visit. Her mother's face grew guarded as she stepped aside to let Aisha enter the small, tidy apartment. They sat on the worn couch, the same couch Aisha had grown up sitting on, watching Saturday morning cartoons and doing homework. What's this about? Evelyn asked, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Aisha pulled out the photograph and laid it on the coffee table between them. She watched as her mother's face went pale, watched as decades of carefully maintained walls crumbled in an instant. Evelyn reached for the photo with shaking hands, staring at her younger self as if looking at a ghost. Where did you get this? Evelyn's voice was barely audible. Jacob gave it to me, and Noah and Alexander and Benjamin and all the others. They came to the diner today. They told me everything, Mom, about the club, about the fire, about who you were before I was born, about Evelyn Stone. Evelyn closed her eyes, tears sliding down her cheeks. I never wanted you to know. I wanted you to have a clean slate, a normal life, no shadows from my past. But it's my past, too, Aisha said gently. It's where I come from. It's who you are underneath all the normalcy you built. I'm not that person anymore, Evelyn protested weakly. That was a different life. I left her behind when I left the club. Did you, though? Aisha challenged, pulling the leather bracelet from her pocket and setting it next to the photograph. Noah kept this for you. For 23 years, they all remembered, Mom. They all still respect you. You're still Evelyn Stone to them, even if you've been trying to be someone else. Evelyn picked up the bracelet, holding it like it might burn her. I had to leave, she whispered. When I found out I was pregnant with you, I knew I couldn't raise a child in that world. It was too dangerous, too unpredictable. I wanted better for you. I wanted safety and stability and a chance at something normal. So, you gave up everything, Aisha said. Everyone who cared about you, everyone who respected you, the identity you'd built. You walked away from all of it for me. I'd do it again, Evelyn said fiercely, meeting Aisha's eyes. 1,000 times over. You were worth it. You are worth it. Aisha pulled her mother into a hug, feeling Evelyn's thin frame shake with sobs, the kind of deep, body-racking crying that comes from decades of held-back emotion finally finding release. I wish you'd told me, Aisha said into her mother's shoulder. I spent my whole childhood thinking we were alone, thinking you had nothing and no one. I didn't know you'd sacrificed so much. I didn't want you to feel guilty, Evelyn said. I didn't want you to look at our small apartment and our tight budget and think it was your fault. My choices were my own. They sat together for a long time, Evelyn holding the photograph and bracelet, Aisha holding her mother. Finally, Aisha pulled out the envelope and set it on the coffee table. They want to help, Aisha said. The club, they gave me this. Evelyn opened the envelope, and her eyes widened at the stacks of bills. No, you have to give it back. I don't want their money. It's not for you, Aisha said. It's for me and for Zoe and Mom. We need it. You know we need it. This is enough to get me out of debt, to give Zoe some security, to maybe even let me think about going back to school someday. But the strings attached, Evelyn started. There are no strings, Aisha interrupted. Jacob was very clear. This is family taking care of family. No obligations, no expectations. Just love, I guess. The kind of love that lasts 23 years. Evelyn looked at the money, then at the photograph, then at her daughter. You met them all? They told you everything? Most of it, probably. The fire in Reno, the war with the Diablos, the peace treaty you negotiated, your racing skills, your courage. Aisha paused. They said you were extraordinary. I was reckless, Evelyn corrected. I was young and stupid and thought I was invincible. You were brave, Aisha countered. You saved Noah's life. You ended a war. You earned respect in a world where respect isn't given lightly. And then you walked away from all of it to give me a chance. That's not reckless, Mom. That's the bravest thing I've ever heard. Evelyn wiped her eyes, a small, sad smile crossing her face. You always were too smart for your own good, just like I was at your age. Jacob said he sees you in me, Aisha said. The strength, the courage, the unbreakable will. He said I'm family whether I ever ride with them or not. You're not joining a motorcycle club, Evelyn said immediately, her maternal instincts overriding everything else. Aisha laughed. Don't worry, I have enough on my plate just trying to raise Zoe and keep us fed. But Mom, I want to know more. I want to hear your stories. I want to understand that part of you that you've kept locked away all these years. Evelyn looked at the photograph again, at the young woman she'd been surrounded by, her chosen family. It's a long story full of mistakes and pain and choices I'm not always proud of. I have time, Aisha said. And Mom, I'm not judging. I'm just trying to understand where I come from. All of it, the good and the bad. So Evelyn began to talk. She talked through the night, her voice growing stronger as she reclaimed pieces of her past. She told Aisha about growing up in foster care, about learning to fight and survive, about finding the motorcycle club, and feeling for the first time in her life like she belonged somewhere. She talked about the freedom of the open road, the brotherhood of the club, the mistakes and the triumphs. She talked about meeting Aisha's father, a brief relationship with a man who was kind but unstable, who had his own demons to fight. She'd kept the pregnancy secret because she'd known he couldn't be a father, that bringing him into Aisha's life would have done more harm than good. She talked about the moment she realized she was pregnant, about the fear and the hope that had warred inside her, about the decision to leave everything behind and start fresh. She talked about the early years working terrible jobs, struggling to make ends meet, but never once regretting her choice. As dawn broke over Silver Springs, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, mother and daughter sat together, surrounded by photographs and memories, building bridges between two worlds that had been separate for too long. "Do you ever miss it?" Aisha asked as the night gave way to morning. "The riding, the brotherhood, the excitement?" Evelyn considered the question honestly. "Sometimes, usually late at night when I can't sleep, I'll remember the feeling of the motorcycle beneath me, the wind in my hair, the sense of absolute freedom. But then I think about you and about Zoe, and I know I made the right choice. The club gave me family for a while, but you gave me purpose. You gave me a reason to be better." "Jacob said to tell you they remember," Aisha said, "that you're still respected, that if you ever need anything, they're still here." "I know," Evelyn said softly. "That's who they are. Loyal to the end, even when you don't deserve it." "Fun?" "You deserve it, Mom," Aisha said firmly. "You deserve all of it." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun rose higher, both women thinking about the past and the future, about the choices that had brought them to this moment. Aisha looked at the envelope of money, at the photograph, at the bracelet now on her mother's wrist where it belonged. She thought about the future, paying off debt, creating stability for Zoe, maybe even pursuing her own dreams instead of just surviving. She thought about the strength flowing through her veins, inherited from a mother who'd faced fire and emerged stronger, who'd sacrificed everything for love. And she thought about the words Jacob had said. "You're still one of us. You always will be." Aisha didn't know what that meant for her future. She didn't know if she'd ever see those men again, if this was just a brief intersection of past and present, or the beginning of something ongoing. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She was no longer the person who'd woken up yesterday morning uncertain and alone. She was Aisha Jackson, daughter of Evelyn Stone, carrying within her the legacy of courage and sacrifice. She was a single mother, a waitress, a survivor. She was connected to something larger than herself, to a history of strength, to a community of loyalty, to a mother whose love had literally reshaped her entire world. As the sun rose fully over the Nevada desert, bathing the apartment in warm morning light, Aisha felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Real, solid, unshakable hope for the future. "Thank you," Aisha said to her mother, "for everything you gave up, for everything you built, for choosing me." Evelyn pulled her daughter close, holding her the way she had when Aisha was a child. "Thank you for understanding, for not hating me for the secrets, for seeing me, all of me, and still being here." "Always," Aisha promised, just like stone, unbreakable. And in that moment, mother and daughter understood each other completely. Two women connected by blood and sacrifice, by secrets revealed and bridges built, by love that had survived time and silence and everything the world could throw at them. The future was uncertain, as futures always are, but they would face it together, carrying the strength of the past and the hope of tomorrow, building something new from the foundation Evelyn had laid 23 years ago when she'd chosen love over freedom, safety over excitement, her daughter over everything else. In the distance, if you listened carefully, you could almost hear the echo of motorcycle engines, a reminder that some connections never truly break, that family extends beyond blood, and that courage, once earned, becomes part of who you are forever.